The slap echoed through the diner, and no one stood up. Not the customers, not the staff, not the men who had watched this happen before. An elderly woman lay on the floor, holding her face, and the man standing over her was smiling. He thought the room belonged to him. He didn't know the door was about to open. Ashford Ridge, Pennsylvania, was the kind of town where people memorized silence. Morning routines never changed. Same streets, same diner, same unspoken rules. And one rule stood above all others: don't challenge Calvin Rourke. But on this morning, a woman named Margaret Ellis walked in without knowing the rules were about to break. Margaret Ellis woke up early that morning, not because she had somewhere to be, but because something felt unfinished. She stood in her small kitchen, hands resting on the counter, staring at a folded note. Morning Bell Diner, 8:15 a.m. No name, no explanation. She almost didn't go, but then she thought about her son. Andre had been gone so long that time had started to blur. Letters came less often, calls shorter. Always the same reassurance: "I'm fine, Mom." Margaret put on her coat anyway. She told herself it was just breakfast. Inside the diner, the bell chimed softly as she entered. Conversations dipped, not stopped, but softened. People noticed her the way they always did. Not with hostility, with caution. Margaret felt it, but she had learned how to carry herself through rooms like this. Chin level, steps measured, dignity intact. She walked down the aisle. That was when she felt it. A slight resistance. Fabric brushing leather. She didn't even turn. Calvin Rourke noticed everything. That was the truth no one wanted to admit. He noticed fear. He noticed hesitation. He noticed who looked down when he stood up. And that morning, he noticed her. To Calvin, respect wasn't earned, it was enforced. When he felt the brush against his boot, his jaw tightened. Not because it hurt, but because it happened without permission. He stood. Hey! Silence obeyed instantly. Calvin lived for moments like this. Public moments. Moments where everyone watched and did nothing. When Margaret turned, apologizing, Calvin barely heard her words. He heard weakness, and weakness, to him, was an invitation. The strike came fast. Too fast. The sound was sharp, final, and when she fell, Calvin felt something familiar. Control. Margaret hit the floor harder than she expected. The tile was cold, her vision blurred. Her hand rose instinctively to her cheek. She waited, not for help, for permission to stand, because experience had taught her something cruel. Standing up too soon could make things worse. Calvin hovered over her. "Apologize," he demanded. "You don't touch me without apologizing." Margaret looked around. Eyes dropped. Fork stayed still. Fear won again. And then, the door chimed. The man who stepped inside didn't rush. That was the first thing that felt wrong to Calvin. Most people rushed to sit, to leave, to avoid attention. This man paused. Tall. Still, observing. Andre Ellis scanned the diner the way he'd been trained to scan unfamiliar rooms. Exit points. People standing. People frozen. Then he saw the woman on the floor. Red on her face. His chest tightened. Not yet. Please, not yet. He took one step forward. Then another. Calvin felt it before he saw it. The room wasn't his anymore. He turned, irritation flashing across his face. "Mind your business," he snapped. The man didn't answer. Instead, he knelt beside Margaret. Andre's voice changed when he spoke. Not louder, softer. "Ma'am," he said, "are you hurt?" Margaret looked at him. Really looked. Something in her expression shifted, confusion turning to recognition. Her breath caught. Andre. The name landed like a weight. Calvin frowned. Andre's hand hovered near her shoulder, but didn't touch until she nodded. "Did he strike you?" Andre asked. The room leaned in. Margaret hesitated. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she knew the cost of truth. "Yes," she whispered. Andre stood. And that was when Calvin realized. This wasn't just a man. This was her son. Before what happens next, pause for just one moment. If you believe no elder should be humiliated in silence, if you believe courage deserves witnesses, then subscribe to Melanin Chronicles right now. Because stories like this only change things when they're told. Now watch closely. Andre didn't shout. That unsettled Calvin more than yelling ever could. "You're going to step back," Andre said calmly. Calvin laughed once. "You don't scare me," he said. Andre didn't move. The room felt smaller. When Calvin raised his voice again, Andre moved. Fast, controlled, final. Calvin stumbled backward, shock replacing confidence. He tried to speak, but the power had shifted. Andre stood between him and his mother, breathing steady. "You don't raise your hand to her," Andre said. "Not today. Not ever." Calvin's world collapsed in front of witnesses he had once ruled. Sirens approached, but not for the reason anyone expected. As officers entered, Calvin started shouting. "He attacked me," he claimed. "He just walked in and..." But something stopped him. The cameras, every angle, every second. And then, a waitress spoke up. Then another customer. Then another. Years of silence broke at once. Andre stood calmly, hands visible. "I intervene," he said evenly. "That's my mother." An officer looked at him closely. "You military?" "Yes," Andre replied. "Navy." The tone shifted. The truth was undeniable. Calvin was taken away, and for the first time in Ashford Ridge. No one looked away. Margaret touched Andre's face gently. "You planned this," she said. He nodded. "I wanted breakfast," he replied. "With you." Tears filled her eyes. The diner breathed again. But here's what no one tells you. That wasn't the end of the story, because what happened in that diner didn't stay there. It traveled through the town, through the courts, through every place silence had once lived. And what came next changed Ashford Ridge forever. If you want the full continuation, if you want stories that challenge silence and restore dignity, subscribe to Melanin Chronicles, because sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one who changes everything.